Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Hi, everyone. Happy Sunday from Nashville, Tennessee, in the US. I'm back to you to conclude our review and discussions of Wake Up and Be Happy by spiritual author Joanna DeAngelis. If this is the first time you join me, please take a moment to see all of our previous discussions of this book. It's actually the eighth book of the psychological series by spiritual author Joanna DeAngelis. We have met weekly to review a single chapter of the book. So please go to our YouTube channel, Solitude Center for Spiritual Living, if you'd like to listen to our previous discussions. Today, we'll focus on our last chapter, which is chapter 30th, called Christmas of Love. The entire psychological series, by the way, it's a total of 17 books, aims at provoking reflections about ourselves, our problems, our conflicts, our challenges, and all the complexities, all the nuances that makes us us. So let's go over what we're going to be talking today. And as you can see, the chapter 30th, as the title indicates, it's all about Jesus. It's about love. And we're going to break down this discussion today uh, with topics about love, Jesus, and life overall. Shall we? So, why why do we end a book, this book in particular, which is about waking up and being happy? So it's all about happiness. But how do we, and why do we end up focusing on Jesus in its last chapter? So, as you can see in the slide, Joanna brings this beautiful quote, right? In mental communion with Him, your doubts will be dispelled, about worries will subside, and you will be transformed, becoming the focus of dignified action that will attract the restless and the afflicted who will get to know him as well. So, just very interesting. So, the reason is because, well, he's our brother. He's the son of God, just like we are. And because actually, during his entire time here on earth, he fulfilled the prophecies and at that point opened up new promises for our future from a humanity perspective. So let's remember a little bit about what Jesus said. He mentioned, I have not come to destroy the law. And from a context perspective, we know that before he came, right, that society that he was inserted was under the laws of the Old Testament. What do I mean by that? Well, the Ten Commandments and the Mosaic or the civic laws. And those laws were there for those that live in a rather disorderly society. Jesus comes and he brings teachings that are revolutionary because he brought a brand new paradigm for all of us, for the entire humanity. And he comes to redirect us into our spiritual maturity. In other words, he brings us a full life where we are richer, we have inner harmony, and we're able now to truly connect with him and with our Father, our Creator, God. So Jesus spoke about, Jesus lived love, and if you think about it, love connects our past with the present and really directs us to our tomorrow. Can we stop a moment to reflect upon the amazingly revolutionary aspect of this quite powerful mission, Jesus brought us the message of loving one another, loving ourselves, loving our enemies. And I often ponder, what does it really mean to love my enemy? In it, in so many words, it just means that we have to love, we should love the other. Who's the other? The other is simply he or she who does not belong to me. In other words, my family members, those who do not look like me, talk like me, think like me, which means love equals tolerance. It is about welcoming all. When we connect past, present, and future through love, we are emboldened by the power of love to accept, to tolerate, and often to forgive those. So, as Joanna puts it in the slide, in that mental communion with Him, your doubts will be dispelled. There is no fear. There is really a sense of belonging to the larger community. So at that moment, as she puts it, it will be Christmas for them, right? Those who are afflicted, those who are restless, those who do not know about love. And at that point, Christmas, if you think about it, is when Jesus is born. So for those, Jesus will be born or even reborn in all of their inner landscape. And I'm talking there, but it's really about me and you. So when we talk about Jesus, we really have to think about when he was born, right? The place that he was born, historically speaking, culturally speaking, was lashed by the whip of suffering, right? So we all know the story of Jesus' birth, and we often look at the time as a time of rather darkness and bitterness. The Roman dominance of Israel led to a state similar perhaps to when the people there were enslaved by the Egyptians. But so the story goes, to comply with the census of that was ordered by Caesar, John and Mary left Nazareth. And in that beautiful, beautiful night, he came and he divided the history before and after that day. And that's what we're talking about, the message that was so powerful that divided uh, completely historically those until then and before and until that, right? So those of us who are Christians, we celebrate that night that symbolizes love, that symbolizes a new promise, and it symbolizes really the joy that comes with being a believer, to being a Christian. But I wanted to spend the next few minutes, the few minutes that we have together about this book, talking a little bit about uh, love, life, Jesus, right? And Joanna talks from that moment on, humanity will never be the same. Yes, and we have to think about that. We walk together now in a new reality, right? And the world, yes, there is violence, but it's not nearly as violent because, right? And Jesus is the peacemaker of my life in your life. And to exemplify that, I want to break down our few moments together to talk about the Sermon of the Mount, because during that sermon, Jesus brought us the words of wisdom that will really make us happy. So it's important, first of all, to remember that before the speech, right, Jesus had to go into a state of silence. And I think it's quite beautiful for us because when we think about it, there's so much noise in our lives, isn't it? It is perhaps the traffic, the hum that is would get used of the, I don't know, the air conditioning, the lights, the power, or the traffic, as I said, people talking, or even in a different context, the noise of our, I don't know, at work, our emails, the endless noise that we come to us through social media and things that distract us. And Jesus at the time, he just went and he spent, as we know, 40 days and 49 in the desert, because he in the desert he was able to kept his silence, and he could hear the entire humanity, entire mankind, as well as his heart in God's messages. So someone mentioned to me that this is so important, to think about what does it mean to be in silence, right? So we can be reminded of Emerson, who the American poet, who says, right, who you are speaks so loudly. I can hear what you're saying. So after Jesus left and he went to the desert, he comes back and he goes to Galilee to speak to those who were there. That is the famous Sermon on the Mount, where many say that if you wipe everything out, all of the sacred texts that are combined together, but you keep the Sermon on the Mount, that is plentiful. So let's talk about the teachings through that sermon. And what is it? It's basically a collection of sayings and teachings. And Jesus brought to us those teachings, uh, emphasizing moral, right, moral teachings. And it includes the Lord's Prayer, but it also includes the Beatitudes. And the Beatitudes are the those central beliefs. With that you understand it all. And I would like to spend, as I said before, a few minutes talking about those. There are not that many, but each beatitude consists of basically two phrases, and it's about the current state and the impact. So in almost all the cases, Jesus used phrases that are actually very familiar to those at the time. They come from the Old Testament, from that context. But Jesus brings us to elevate to his teachings, which is, I love to say, point counterpoint, old and new. He did not come to break any laws, but he comes to shed light to the knowledge that was already there. So the Beatitudes overall teaches about love. It teaches about humility, and that in itself, it's a complete break from religious beliefs that were based on fear and sheer strength, right? The powerful being so strong that they impose that sense of fear. They also manifest the ideals of mercy, God's mercy, our own sense of spirituality, and awakening in all of us compassion. So this is something that is very important for us to as we close this book, to really put our thoughts together. So let's go to the first beatitude, which is Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. So in Matthew, we find these Beatitudes, and I ask you and I ask myself, who are the poor in spirit? Well, we live in a world that is actually full of moral poverty. This is indeed an invitation for us to reflect upon that. What is my inner wealth? So when Jesus said, "Blessed are the poor in spirit," did he mean those who perhaps lack intelligence, who lack material wealth? No, he simply meant blessed are those that are humble. And who are those, right, that are humble? Who are those who are not humble? So those, if you think about the excluded ones from the kingdom of heaven, are any one of us, you and me, that hold such high opinion of ourselves. We feel superior, and we are so superior that we don't look, we don't listen, we believe that we are above everybody, including the law and any other judgments. So Jesus, in this one little phrase, right, teaches us that no one will be part of the kingdom of heaven without the simplicity of heart and the humility of spirit. And it is important to understand, because we are reading a book from Joanna de Angelis, because she reminds us time and time again throughout this book that to be humble in such a materialistic world is not easy at all, because our world is dominated still by our desires, our passions. Our success is often based on our social status, and that they're defined by what we have and not by what we are. Oh, just we can go back to various discussions where we reflected upon the idea of success based on the house that we live in, the car that we drive, all the gadgets we have, the social clubs we may belong to, the holidays that we take, and we come back, yes, happy, but there is a sense of feeling superior. And that's the problem, not to have those things, but attaching a meaning to them. So, to the poor in spirit, we need to learn how those material goods um, do not bring meaning to who we are. Therefore, if you think about it, this first beatitude, the first proposition from Jesus is to bless all of us who do not feel imprisoned to the material goods, because they are rich in their feelings and their sentiments. All right. Second beatitude: blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. And again, I stop to think about it. What is to be pure in heart? Well, it just simply means to be simple, to be pure, to be humble, right? And those concepts are interconnected. Those who are pure in heart, they do not cultivate ideas that emphasize selfishness, pride, egocentric perspective of the world. So to be pure in heart, we need to be able to refrain from actually being influenced by our environment and be influenced by others around us, no matter where we go. because that often can lead to, let's say, if you are frustrated, you become irritated, and when we are around maybe despair, we become desperate and we lose hope. And instead, Jesus is saying, be pure, be simple, don't be influenced, and embrace a life of harmony. So now your mental state is one that will never be agitated, will be pure, will be simple. So think in terms of those who are pure, when they smile, the smile shines through. They light up their faces, and the pure is through the joy in their faces. They are contagious to the heart. It goes through all of you, not just a preoccupied appearance of something. So, we can talk more about it, right? In terms of some of the teachings regarding being pure at heart, but he really talks about, in my opinion, the intentions and the feelings inside of our heart are basically more important than any external means of expression. And to be pure of heart is to be able to love, yes, love unconditionally. To be pure in the heart is to be able to, anytime there is anger, conflict, envy, we're able to transform those sentiments into peace, into love. And that's what Jesus brings to us so simply. So let's go to the third beatitude where he talks about uh, blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called the children of God. We can also bring here, blessed are the gentle, right? For they will inherit the earth. And I often think about it, right? What is to be a peacemaker? No, it's not about being ambassador between two countries, right? Peacemakers are all of us, you and me, whenever we are in peace with ourselves. So if we are peaceful, or if we are harmonious, right? We bring harmony, balance. We become the example of that in our lives, in our communities, in our environments. So it's very important to understand, and I'd like to share a passage found in the Gospel according to Spiritism called patience, because peace that comes from inside will not be influenced by anything around us. So in that passage, it says, courage, my friends, Christ is your model. That's why we're here talking about Jesus, right? Christ is your model. He suffered far more than any of you and had nothing to offer penitence for, whereas we must atone for our past and thereby fortify ourselves for the future. So be patient, be Christians. And she says, she ends, this word summarizes everything. So we're getting to a close. I would like to talk about the beatitude, right? The blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the world, the earth. I'm sorry, and we can ask what did Jesus mean by that? And he's only recommending that we do not give more importance to worldly goods than to the other people. And Jesus wishes to tell us that those worldly goods, those material possessions, they in the past, historically, up to now, actually, right, are monopolized. What do they say? 99% of the wealth is part of that 1%, the population, right? So they're monopolized, they're owned, they're concentrate in the hands of a few, in those few, because of what they had to do to amass such wealth. They're often violent. They are often feel superior and indifferent to the suffering to those below, those who are meek, right, and those who are peaceful. And those individuals that are very powerful, they will not look twice to the others who perhaps need the bare minimum necessities of life. So Jesus says, don't fret. There is justice. Justice will be done on earth as it is on heaven, and because the meek will be called God's children. So when humanity submits itself to the law of love and charity, selfishness, he promises, will cease to exist. What a beautiful promise to what's coming to us, right? So we come to another beatitude, which is blessed the merciful, for they shall obtain mercy. And we want to keep reading about Matthew 18 and verses 15, 21, 22, when he said, in the words of Jesus, right? Moreover, if your brother has sinned against you, go to him, make his wrong known in private between you and him. Then Peter, and I love this, Peter approached him and said, Lord, how many times shall I forgive him? Up to 7 times? And Jesus said unto him, I do not tell you up to 7 times, but up to 70 times seven. And I always think, and this is a tongue in cheek, of course, but I always think a mother or father of a very young child that maybe 2 year old, 3 year old, in that toddler stage, where I say, well, you have to forgive 70 times seven the same question every day, right? So let us be forgiving, let us be understanding, let us be merciful. So when we look at this beatitude from a spiritist perspective, we have to understand that behind those words are the law of cause and effect, right? So if we hear and we have discussed many times the idea of reincarnation, we we understand that if we don't forgive in this experience of life, in this present incarnation, we will have to forgive or ask for forgiveness later. So Jesus tells us, make peace to the, and I like to put air quotes, to the so-called enemies while you walk with him, because you will achieve freedom, will not achieve freedom until you do so. So he again, if you think in terms of the paradigm that he brought to us, it's about love, but it's also about hope and forgiveness. So, as we come to a close, I wanted to say another beatitude, or bring to us the other beatitude, which is the idea that in that beatitude, that suffering, yeah, and any of our pains and afflictions are just temporary. So when he brings to us this beatitude, blessed are the afflicted, and he goes on to say in Matthew chapter 5 and verses 5, 6, and 10, he says, blessed are they who weep, for they shall be comforted. Blessed are they who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they shall be filled. Blessed are they who suffer persecution because of righteousness' sake, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. So we close our discussion here by thinking about the idea of justice in the idea of justice for those who are afflicted, right? And Jesus tells us in the Sermon on the Mount that we are promised that all of our afflictions will be compensated. He promises that in the future life we will no longer be afflicted. And if we don't have the certainty of this future, this means nothing, right? It's like, well, what are you talking here? I'm in pain. You say, forget because you're going to be living a different life. No, it's very important for us to understand that it is temporary. And without being too silly here, but even with this beatitude and these words from Jesus and the words, the certainty that we have of life after life, this is not easy, right? It's quite difficult to understand the fact that we must suffer to be happy. And when we think about the sense of justice, the law of cause and effect, I immediately think about it. But why do I have to suffer more than those around me? Why maybe I was not born with the same opportunities as my neighbor, right? Why um, the other person that I know achieve everything, and struggle and I work and I get nothing. And so those are the things that we keep pondering. Why does it feel so difficult for me? Why do people that are good suffer perhaps more than those who are not as good? So at that point we have to believe that having faith in the future will console and will bring us patience, like that passage that I read to you. They don't explain those differences, they what we call irregularity, those apparently um, uh, uh, contradictions to the sense of justice. But as we accept God, and we accept God as the supreme intelligence and our creator, He, God, is the primary cause of all things. He is good, and as such, He cannot be impartial. So we have, as we close our time together, the understanding that everything that comes to our lives, the vicissitudes of our lives, they come from a cause before, and as God is just, so then that cause for our current suffering must be just. So this is what all of us need to understand. The teachings of Jesus, through them, we started on the path to find that cause within our history, present or past lives. And now that we are sufficiently mature, we can understand. And he revealed this through Spiritism. It's revealed to all of us. So, with all of that, I invite all of us to ensure Jesus is reborn in our souls, in our hearts, and let Jesus receive the shelter in us, not only on Christmas, but in all of our days. I appreciate you joining me to study the book together and reflect upon what is needed from us to be happy. Thank you, everyone.